Pues muy buenos días a todos. Bienvenidos a esta primera jornada
Good
de
morning.
innovación social
Welcome
que
to
tiene como título Laboratorios que transforman
THIVIC's first
el mundo.
social innovation event
Como
titled
decíamos,
Labs
muchísimas gracias a todos los
Transforming
que
the
estáis
Public
aquí
Sector.
presentes.
As we
Esta
said,
iniciativa
thank you very much to all of you
por
who
THIVIC,
are here
el
today. This
Laboratorio de Innovación
initiative
Social que
organized
también está en
by
Madrid,
THIVIC,
forma
the
parte de
Social
una serie
Innovation
de
Lab of
acciones
the Madrid City
que tenemos en
Council,
marcha
is part of a
desde el
series of
laboratorio
activities and initiatives
con el
launched
objetivo
by
de
this lab
impulsar el ecosistema de innovación social,
with the aim
creando unos
of
espacios en los que sean
boosting the social
compartidos para
innovation
que los
ecosystem,
agentes y
creating shared
laboratorios de
spaces
referencia
for
también,
different stakeholders
contando
and
con
leading
la
labs,
ciudadanía, intercambien experiencias
also with the
y
participation of
conocimientos
citizens,
en torno
can
a iniciativas
exchange
públicas, compromisos
experiences,
transgresores, iniciativas
learnings, and knowledge about
locales.
public initiatives, challenging
En la
projects,
jornada de
and
hoy
social
contamos con la
innovation
participación
methodologies.
de distintos laboratorios
Today,
de
we are
variedad
joined by
geográfica y regional.
various labs
Contamos
from
también con
across
HazLab, el Laboratorio
the
Digital de
country,
Innovación Social del Ministerio para la Transformación
namely
Digital.
HazLab, the digital lab for social
También está
innovation of the
presente
Ministry
Living
for
Lab,
Digital and
un
Public Service
foro ubicado
Transformation,
en la Universidad de Comillas
plus Living Lab
con actividades
Forum,
relacionadas
located
con el
at
ámbito
the
académico
University of
como
Comillas, with
también
activities
experiencia
related to the
internacional.
university
También
academic
contamos con la
field
participación de la AP, el
and
Laboratorio Aragón
international
de Gobierno
too.
Abierto,
We also have the
también la
participation of
NovaGob,
LAB, the Aragon
organización sin
Open
ánimo de
Government
lucro
Lab,
conocida como
the
NovaGob de la
NovaGob
Universidad Autónoma de
Foundation, a
Madrid,
non-profit
impulsando innovación
organization
pública,
created as a spin-off
y
of the
HIS,
Autonomous
el Hub de
University of
Innovación
Madrid,
Social y
also
Sanitaria que
promoting
reúne del
public
Sistema Nacional de
innovation, and
Bioretónica
the
de Personas
social
Esenciales.
and healthcare
Para
innovation
cerrar,
hub that
contamos
depends
con
on the Catalan
THIVIC
healthcare system and the public
como
social
colaboradores.
services network. Additionally, we have the
María
participation
Pía
of our
Junquera,
lab,
directora general
THIVIC,
de
with Maria Pia
Participación
Junquera,
Ciudadana.
who is the General Director of Citizen
La agenda de la
Participation at the
sesión
Madrid City
os
Council.
contamos. Es una
As
sesión
for the
bastante
session's
larga.
agenda, we'll
Tenemos
let
3
you know
horas
that it's a
hoy.
fairly long session. We have 3.5 hours ahead of us. Firstly,
Intervendrá
the
el
Civic
laboratorio
Lab will
para
speak
el
to
recorrido que
discuss
tenemos hasta
our
ahora y
journey
los objetivos
so
a
far and a
cumplir.
brief overview of
Luego
future
tendremos
goals.
intervenciones
Later, we will
de cada uno de los
listen to the
laboratorios
presentations
que
from
nos
each of the
hablarán de
labs,
estas
which will
experiencias
focus
más
on different
específicas. Por un
experiences in
lado,
social innovation.
HazLab,
On
Living
the
Lab
one
y
hand,
Comillas
AtLab, Living Lab,
hablaremos
Comillas, and Lab
quizá
will share
experiencias
experiences related
relacionadas
to
con metodologías
innovative
innovadoras.
methodologies.
También
Also,
NovaGob y
NovaGob
HIS
and HIS,
abordarán
for their part,
nos
will
relatarán
address
proyectos
and
que
tell
hayan
us about
realizado
projects
con
they have
temas que han
launched that
sido
have
o son
been or
retadores
are challenging in
la
terms of
transformación social.
social innovation.
Tendremos un breve descanso,
We'll
veremos
take a
posible de
short
20
break,
minutos, depende
about
cómo
20
vayamos.
minutes long if possible,
Porque la sesión es bastante
depending on how we're
larga.
doing, because the session is
Pero sí
quite
que os
long.
pediremos en
We'll
su momento
also ask
también,
you to
os
complete a
lanzaremos un cuestionario,
survey
un link a un cuestionario de
via
Google
Google
Forms,
Forms.
porque queremos
At
también
some
que todos
point,
los
we'll send you the link
participantes, además
because
de
we want
los
all
intervinientes
participants, in addition to the
en
speakers,
la jornada, todos los que estáis
to
asistiendo,
be
nos
able to
podáis dar
give us
vuestra
your
opinión sobre
feedback
determinadas
on certain
problemáticas que
social issues and your
nos han puesto
opinions. We are
internamente
very
inquietos.
interested
Hoy
in
tenemos
hearing
una
everyone's
participación enorme
opinion. We
de
have a huge turnout
representantes
today. I don't know if
interesadas.
there are more than 80
No
of
podemos
us
quizás
here. We can't
profundizar en
give
todos,
everyone
pero
a
sí que
voice, but
nos
we would
gustaría
like
que
you to
nos
complete
completéis
this
este
survey
cuestionario para
so
que,
that
bueno, pues
you
emitáis
have the
opinión de
opportunity
la
to share
ponencia.
your view. And finally, the
Y a partir
final
de aquí, el
segment of the
desarrollo
day
del día,
will be a
tendremos una
roundtable
mesa redonda
discussion
con
with
representantes
representatives
de
from
los
the
distintos
various
laboratorios
labs
que han intervenido
that have
previamente
previously
para abordar
participated to
determinadas
address
problemáticas
specific
que surgen
social issues,
y
share
compartir
opinions, and generate
opiniones y
debate.
generar un debate.
Okay,
Muy
very
bien,
well. So,
pues nada,
first,
en
we'd
primer
like to
lugar
give the
tenemos la
floor to
presentación
Maria Pia
a María Pía
Junquera to tell us a little bit
María Pía para que nos cuentes
about
un poco
THIVIC's
la
work.
labor de CIVIC
And then we'll
y bueno,
continue
y
with
seguimos
the
con
lab
las intervenciones de los
presentations. Thank
laboratorios.
you very
Muchas
much.
gracias.
Muy
Thank
bien,
you very
pues
much,
muchísimas
and
gracias a vosotros
welcome to
y
everyone.
bienvenidos
Thank you
a
very
todos.
much for
Muchas gracias por
participating in this
participar en esta
social
jornada de
innovation
innovación que
event
hacemos
organized
con
by
la
the Madrid
Universidad
City
de
Council.
Madrid.
And also
Y
welcome
también
to
bienvenidos
this
a esta
Open
Semana de
Government
Universidad
Week,
Abierta, ¿no? Que
which
ya
has been a
empezó su
tradition in
edición
Spain
en España
since
desde aquel año
2018 when we got
2018.
started.
Que yo
I
recuerdo
fondly
aquellos
remember
inicios
that
que
beginning
teníamos
when we
alguna
didn't know
reunión
how
de
it was
grupo,
going to
que
turn out. It
precisamente
turned out
en
to be
esa ocasión
phenomenal. At the time, there
hacíamos
were more than
estos eventos
300
y este
events
año,
organized,
pues el
and we
éxito
thought it was
está
already a
pasando
success.
en
people started looking at us and saying, hey, what's going on in Spain? And now Eugenio from Data Lab, I just asked him how much is being organized in Spain, and he said more than 1,700, right, Eugenio? And that's how we are doing. Since it's relevant, I'd like to let you know that sometimes ideas, good ideas, arise in the most unexpected ways. I haven't told this often, but this idea of bringing Open Government Weeks to Spain arose in February 2018 on a plane returning from the Open Government Partnership Summit held in Europe at regional level with the leaders from Europe. And I was on the plane with my deputy director. I was at the State Department at the time. The deputy director of Open Government. We started on a little notepad on our plane. Come on, why don't we do it? Shall we give it a go? We started to think about it and said, okay, we're going to bring back the Open Government Week, but we're also going to do it at a big scale. We launched ourselves at that moment outside of the office in a different context, brainstorming. And that's it. And well, now look, I think it turned out really, really well. So on top of that, I want to send a warm welcome, a warm message to all of us who at the time, I know some of you are here among the participants. We started this open government ecosystem, and also a warm welcome and message to those who are still here working on this topic and who remain very involved with their great dedication. Okay, let's get to the point, I suppose. I'm here to talk about THIVIC, where we come from, where we're going. Many of you know this because you are already part of our social innovation ecosystem. But just as a brief recap, THIVIC is the Social Innovation Lab of the Madrid City Council, composed of two English words, think, meaning to think, and THIVIC, meaning that we think with and for citizens. Our motto is connecting ideas, and we connect ideas to try to do so with three main objectives. Firstly, the most important one, to seek out meeting spaces with professionals, officials, experts, and citizens to find solutions to public problems. That's the most important one. And two objectives that are a bit more secondary, trying to train professionals, giving them tools to encourage creativity and entrepreneurship. And the third objective is fostering this ecosystem of social innovation. That's why we are here today with those other stakeholders we have identified, trying to share best practices with them. How did THIVIC emerge? It was an idea from our social council of the city of Madrid, which is the highest strategic planning body, which includes professional associations, universities, companies, unions, and so on. It was decided to set up what we called a social innovation hub then. We're going to look for these slightly less formal spaces. The social council is very formal. We're going to look for other spaces because they can be very enriching. Also, we found ourselves in a moment where Spain had just joined the OECD Innovation Declaration, and the OECD told us you have to connect and generate alliances with other legal entities, individuals, public and private entities to collaborate and co-create solutions to public problems. So anyway, we took the plunge and decided to start THIVIC. We started with a pilot because we were very clear that we had to start testing, trying, seeing where this would take us. Sometimes it's easier to rectify, reverse, or regress what you're doing if you start with a pilot. And making expectations very clear. We weren't here to solve the world because Madrid is very complex as a city. We certainly didn't intend to be the solution to all problems. We simply wanted to bring new perspectives, different points of view, new perspectives, because we had our structures, both formal and informal, but we needed to incorporate these new methodologies. And so we began by conducting two pilot projects. The first one was to identify problems. To summarize, there were many sessions. We started by detecting to see what problems we could identify, our citizen perception surveys, complaints and claims, what we received through the THIVIC Madrid platform. Surveys were developed. We identified up to 62 problems, which were then prioritized based on the perception of how they impacted social well-being, the city council's capacity for action, and we focused on three problems in particular: air quality, social inequality, and unwanted loneliness among young people. From there, very briefly, we worked on strengths, opportunities, threats, etc. And then we made two trees, one with the causes and consequences, and another one, which I like a bit better, which is positive. What means could we implement and what ends were we pursuing? And now we are focusing on the second pilot, which for me has been a real success. We have participants in that pilot, which was on unwanted loneliness among the youth. We focused on one of those three problems. 32 adults and 11 young people, ages 14 to 22, participated. Among the adults, there was a wide variety of profiles from staff, of course, from Madrid Health, but also experts, psychologists, researchers, university staff, mental health experts, maternal and child health experts, unwanted loneliness experts, people from the City Social Council. We worked in different group sessions using a methodology based on design thinking, identifying, researching, creating ideas, prototyping, assessing. And while we identified the most common situations of loneliness, unwanted loneliness, potential archetypes of young people who found themselves in that situation, sharing challenges to be achieved, but also devising prototype solutions to address such challenges. We worked with young people. We asked them what they were worried about, how they felt, what they wanted. These sessions were essential, and so in the end, we defined a common goal to find a common ground in the broadest possible sense where these young people could feel part of it, with connections between resources, people, shared spaces, and activities that would integrate these young people. And a prototype was defined, a platform, a sort of community with interactions and dynamics that would foster this online collaboration, but also essential in-person spaces and activities. And above all, those adult figures who would guide the young people who were called, and I love this, professional ambassadors, but the youth were also young ambassadors who would serve as role models for these other boys and girls in this same situation who could contribute their experience. Out of all of this, very briefly, of course, this is a summary, but just to give you an idea, for me, one of the key elements was that once the work was completed, they were presented to the people with the highest responsibility at the city council, people who were ultimately responsible for making the decision about whether we should move forward, right? The results were presented to the deputy mayor, the delegate for social policies, and the manager of Madrid Salud. The three took over, and today Madrid Salud has taken over the project. Welcome to those who've been able to come here. They have taken over a workshop about unwanted loneliness among the youth, integrated it into the fourth Open Government Plan. We'll be able to assess it, monitor it, and keep collaborating. What came next? Following this success, we decided to scale and institutionalize THIVIC while maintaining the three pillars mentioned above. Regarding the first pillar, the workshops, we have already held several in which many of those present have participated. 4 major themes have been identified in this first stage, potential problems that concern the youth. We have identified them around 4 axes: housing and urban planning, waste and environmental awareness, youth unemployment and vulnerable neighborhoods, and aging. Work has been done on these subtopics and prioritized based on impact, urgency, and municipal capacity for action, right, to solve these issues. In the end, now we have several lines of work prepared, or topics rather. Youth collectives in disadvantaged neighborhoods. The other one is quality of public spaces and access to housing, but also integration of older people. And there is a cross-cutting axis, which is accessibility. There's a lot of work ahead of us. Those of you who have participated, we encourage you to do so because we will keep focusing on this. There's a lot of work for many months. We have continued with the second focus, the one of capacity building. We have just got started. Workshops for public employees were organized in May, trying to boost their creativity, and will continue in June. And regarding the third pillar, we have identified many key stakeholders, several of whom are here today and who will be speaking today. Thank you for being here. This event is part of that effort. THIVIC has been incorporated as one of the commitments of the fourth Open Government Plan, approved by the Joint Steering Group. The civil society and city council members are members of this group. In addition, we have presented it as a challenge for the Open Government Partnership. And yes, we are very excited. I've said this a lot of times because this idea originated from civil society. We saw it come to life, and because the first pilot project was a success. We don't aim to solve all the problems. We do aim to contribute and collaborate and do our part. I'm delighted to be here today in this organization. I'm very grateful to all the speakers for their presence, as well as to all of you who signed up for this session. And I look forward to listening to you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria P. As we were saying in our agenda right now, we will be presenting the different labs. The first block that we wanted to tackle is the one of innovative methodologies in social innovation. We were telling you to share your experiences in terms of methodologies and ways of working together that you might have found interesting. So, let's give the floor in the first place to Eugenio Cañizares. Thank you, Eugenio. Thank you. Good morning. Let's get started, shall we? First thing I wanted to do is thank you for counting on HazLab, not only for this Open Government Week, but also for including us in the innovation ecosystem. I think it's very important for labs to participate and for us to collaborate. There's work for everyone, and we can all learn from each other. Initiatives like this Open Government Week, which Maria Pia mentioned, arise precisely from a different way of doing things, a conversation on a plane, an idea, and the courage to implement it. Saying, hey, this is going to be a challenge, we're going to have to fight a lot of people, but we believe in this idea firmly, and we are pushing it forward. Well, that event, which began with 300 people, has now reached more than 1,700. This also means that the values of open governments, including citizen participation and labs, are ideas that are taking its roots or that are consolidating. They should consolidate even more because I believe it's one of the things we're most concerned about and that we try to spread the most. I'm going to share a presentation. I think you can see it, right? Let me share it. Can you see it? Yes, we can see it perfectly, Eugenio. Right? Whenever we talk about labs, I like to explain why a lab is necessary and exactly what it is. It's true that those of us who work in the field of open governments are familiar with the term, but outside our field, many people ask, hey, what is a lab? What purpose does it serve? What does a lab do in government? And above all, why is it necessary? I think it's important to convince people that it's very important. I like to start with a quote from the book Meow by Benito Pérez Galdós. Later they will say, what a pity not having raised the 4 points that of morality, customs unification. This is a quote which means, from the book, which means that there are some very good ideas, but the administration doesn't implement them. It's the exact opposite of the example Maria told us. There are people who drive them, but in general, administrations have more ideas than executions of such ideas. The book I was quoting is from the year 1808. The idea of administrations hasn't changed. More than 200 years have passed, but if you ask people, do you think government is slow, lagging, or inaccessible? Generally, most people would answer yes. The administration hasn't changed, but the world has. A lot. I have many examples here. Things that didn't exist 25 years ago. There was no iPhone, no YouTube, no Gmail, no Instagram, no X, no Facebook, no Amazon, Coca-Cola Zero, WhatsApp or TikTok, all of these things that are part of our daily lives now and which give us an idea of how quickly society has changed. Things that 25 years ago didn't exist are now part of our daily lives. This has entailed a very fast-paced change. We also see a crisis or a change in the way people get their news. Previously, it was traditional media, established media, the mainstream media, national-wide or international-wide with a structured, a loyal audience. Today, those media are losing readers because people get their news from social media, from videos on TikTok to Instagram, X, which was formerly called Twitter. And this changes the way we perceive the world. At the bottom of the slide, you have an image of a YouTuber, an influencer, which reviews products. He published a very negative review of an American electric car. And as a result of this video published on the internet, he practically bankrupted the company and the CEO. So we don't just get our information through new channels, but they have a much broader impact, this media. In this society, we can see it. This creates a society characterized by polarization. VUCA or BANI are environments that are extremely complex, volatile, where established companies disappear overnight. There's a lot of uncertainty. We don't have the certainty that we had when everything was consolidated and was moving slowly. We have a lot of examples. We live in a world of wars, pandemics, crisis, with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of complexity. There's not a clear cause-consequence relationship and a lot of ambiguity in our society. And that situation leads to distrust. Distrust in governments, democracy, and by extension, institutions, the states. In general, this trust trickles down to institutions like autonomous communities, local governments, local administrations, and the administration in general. In this context, that is quite complex, the administration cannot continue operating in the same way. We at least need more agile ways of working and that are definitely much closer to our citizens. We cannot afford to take so long to implement measures in our administrations. Problems evolve very quickly, the society evolves very quickly, and we are reacting too slow. And by the time we do, the problem may have already changed and the solution is no longer applicable. Citizens, moreover, are demanding more participation in design. This disenchantment with administrations, we need to revert it. Citizens, moreover, are already accustomed to participating in everything. They give reviews of products, they rate them, they have a direct contact with companies on apps, and they want to replicate, we would like to replicate it to governments. It's logical, right? They should participate more in the design and implementation of public policies. What do we need to do from the government to open new channels for participation that are more effective, transparent, but also more inclusive? We need to make that effort from the point of view that it's really amazing to use electronic media. That's all very well, but we run the risk of leaving those who, due to age, socioeconomic status, or whatever, cannot access electronic media. They have a lower level of access to them. And we need to make them part of the system because they are impacted by it largely as well. If we do this, we will achieve the following. We will, on the one hand, improve the quality of our democracy. We might improve and create a more participatory system, and we might find new solutions to current challenges. We need to get to know the challenges of our society very quickly, much faster than we did before, and we need to count on them to find solutions. We will stop searching for solutions alone in offices, and we need to begin to harness collective intelligence, counting on our citizens. It's not only about extracting their needs, but making the most of collective intelligence to find new solutions that perhaps we ourselves wouldn't even think of, but that can emerge in collaboration with our citizens. In this context, or this need, within the fourth Open Government Plan, there was a commitment, number 3, that focused on improving citizen participation in public affairs. As you know, this plan is equal. It is developed with input from both the government and civil society. And our citizen proposal was about innovation labs. Why not create an innovation lab to encourage participation? To encourage the participation of citizens and therefore to define public programs. So the General Directorate of Public Governance, and in particular from the Subdirectorate of Open Government, said, we think this is a very good idea. Let's implement it. We are going to implement it. And that is how HazLab was born. We already know why we need a lab. What justifies the appearance of a lab, but what exactly is it, a lab? Often when we talk to people who are outside of this field, when you say you work in a lab, people imagine a white coat. That's the idea they've got, right? A white coat and test tubes and microscopes. And well, It's similar, it's not that different. We also do tests, we create definitions, but there are collaborative and networked workspaces, spaces for creativity and learning, spaces to boost innovation ecosystems and dynamism, agents for change. At its core, a lab is a space, whether virtual or physical or even hybrid. Hybrid for me is definitely the ideal setting, where there are clear rules. And the most important rule is collaboration. It is a space where we don't work alone, but rather seek solutions with others like civil society, academia, public employees, and other administrations. It is a space for participation. We want you to belong to the solution, to take part in it. And I'm talking about all the groups we are collaborating with. It's very important to remember that this is a space for experimentation and to make mistakes. This is very important. Why am I saying this? One of the biggest barriers to traditional management is the fear of making mistakes. You have to plan everything so well, anticipate so much that in the end, things are so overthought that they don't get done. In a lab, on the other hand, we're very lucky because making mistakes is allowed, because what's important is testing. As Maria Pia was saying, creating pilot projects, prototypes, we need to grab a problem very quickly, discover it, identify it, looking for solutions, and create a pilot project. And if it goes wrong, we learn and we change. And we can iterate. We only maintain the good practices and we correct our mistakes. So it's very important to change our mindset, allowing us to be more agile and to be more daring. Often there are ideas that are innovative that might come up, but they don't because of that fear to make mistakes. You can make more out-of-the-box decisions. In the lab, you can tell your idea, and no matter how crazy it is, we try it out. If it goes well, fine. If it doesn't, we change it. This is very important. We need to change the mindset, which is what precisely the labs do. We change the traditional way of working. It's also a space for debate. Everybody has their own idea, something to contribute, something to share. We want people to feel at ease and to want to participate. There needs to be debate. We don't want to make decisions unilaterally. Citizen participation isn't only about saying yes to everything. It's about debating ideas and discovering new things. I know I'm dwelling on this for a long time, but as I was saying, to summarize, an innovation lab for participation is a space for experimentation and co-creation, a way to generate public value, modernize the relationship between government and citizen, and offer new channels for engagement. This definition isn't from a famous author, but from Microsoft Copilot, but I thought it was a good definition to incorporate. HazLab is for now a 100% digital lab. This data is more distant from the citizenry than a city council. It is supported on innovation methodologies. We have powerful technological tools designed to foster this collaboration. This tool that we have that is so powerful allows you to, and has been specifically designed to foster collaboration. A part of the methodology of innovation that we use is thanks to the fact that it's supported by a tool which allows you to create working groups, forums, challenges, surveys, forms, and share information. It's very important to have a tool to kind of allow you to develop all the elements of methodologies, innovative methodologies like design thinking. For example, in the project to assist seniors in their procedures and processes with the AGE, the General State Administration, we use design thinking because we wanted to improve assistance to seniors in their paperwork, because there's a common complaint. Digital support is complex for the senior citizens. The phone system isn't well known or clear, and seniors feel neglected. So we designed a project where we would contact civil society through third sector platforms and associations of the elders from different backgrounds. We wanted to know their problems when dealing with administrations and to basically co-create and design a project where we could test solutions with them that were tailored to their needs. Let me show you things that we do. This is a little bit about the project. It's available at HazLab in the URL that is below. And what we wanted to share. HazLab helped us share documents, coordinate, and follow up the project. The whole history of this project can be consulted here, and you can follow it live, the empathy maps, the schedule and calendar for meetings and sessions. The methodology was design thinking with empathy, definition, ideation, prototyping, and testing. The empathy map, to close this topic about methodology, is all about defining characteristics, right? Not of the clients, which is the methodology that you might know better, but citizens. We want to know our citizens well. What do they think? What are they motivated by? What do they do? What efforts are necessary on their side? What are their fears and frustrations? We do this through meetings with them where we characterize these citizens, right? We often think that from our offices, we know what citizens are thinking, what others are thinking, those who we want to help. But in reality, that's not true. We can have a bit vague idea or intuition, but only through structured methodologies can we really get to know them better. And through these kinds of meetings, we are able to achieve this archetype. That's a little bit about an example of an archetype within this project for over 65-year-olds. We created 3 archetypes: people who use the online channel, people who use the telephone channel, and the face-to-face channel. Why do specific kinds of people use a channel or the other? Generally, the online channel was used by those who have learned how to use a computer at work and had recently retired. They found it easier to relate to these apps and use them. Now, what about people who would prefer the face-to-face or phone channels? Maybe people who had mobility difficulties or challenges, people who didn't feel familiar with internet, they might not have a computer, they might only use WhatsApp on their phones. People who would attend face-to-face were people who wanted to see a familiar face or a friendly face to share their problems with. So we wanted to detect all of these trends. What kind of person might use every channel? How can we understand this? and find solutions. It's very important to count on archetypes in HazLab. Another one of the tools that was extremely useful was this post-it system. This is a journey map. It's called the prior system, is also based on colorful post-its where you can like or add fire emojis. This might seem silly. It's difficult to tell people that you're doing something different from filling out paperwork, but these methodologies foster the participation of citizens. If you want to talk to them, you have meetings and you show them this kind of methodology, what you are doing is to generate, so to speak, much more information, making people feel much more comfortable and share more than they would in other kinds of meetings. And that's all when it comes to a journey map. Looking at all the steps, the before, during, and after of a specific problem, right? What do they understand? What are the pain points or critical points, contact points, etc.? How they feel, the needs they face. These are methodologies that are extremely visual, but at the same time, they build trust by citizens when it comes to them feeling comfortable to share what they need. That's all. I won't dwell on this for longer. Basically, this is a methodology supported by a tool that facilitates sharing information. Let me take down my presentation. Methodologies like design thinking, archetypes of the journey map, and a tool supporting and facilitating all of this. I know I've run out of time. I apologize. Don't worry, Eugenio. Thank you very much for your intervention. The effort to apply these methodologies involving citizens and allowing us to increase their engagement and detect, identify their actual needs and particularities, which will later make the design of our services by administrations become more appropriate, suitable, and focused on the real needs that they have. This is fascinating. Thank you so much for your intervention. Now let's move on to the Living Lab. Birgit Strootman and Bernardo Andres. Thank you very much. Allow me to share my screen. Give me a second. There you go. There you go. Thank you very much for inviting us to this session. It's a pleasure to be here. As you were saying, my name is Birgit Hotman and Bernardo's my colleague. We both work at the Pontificia Comillas University and IUPIS, an alliance of European universities that Comillas is a part of. And within this topic, we would like to focus especially on one of the activities of our alliance, which is our Living Lab. We are a little bit younger compared to other participants. Our Living Lab has been up and running for a year, so it's very interesting to hear your opinions and be able to learn basically from you. Our presentation is divided in two parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about Living Lab and its focus, but also later Bernardo will get into two specific Living Lab projects that we are carrying out. That's all when it comes to the structure of our presentation. Living Lab is part of EU Peace. EU Peace is an alliance of new European governments, as you can see in the map. To the right, it's an alliance that covers not only Spain, but France, Turkey, the Czech Republic, etc., Bosnia, many universities that have come together through three matrix axes and on behalf of the EU Peace Alliance, I think those axes are clear. We are united by the will to develop a peaceful society, something that is not necessary to justify nowadays. I mean, there are so many conflicts, not only internationally, but regionally and locally between groups of our society, more or less the disadvantaged groups. And within this realm, it's obvious that we need for justice or for everybody to have equal access to justice, the same rights and the same possibility to be represented in the legal system. Thirdly, all of this implies that we need social inclusion of different groups with whom we work with at different levels, internationally, locally, regionally. We think about the local Spanish level. For instance, we have a Caritas report in 2024. The FUESA report talks about social exclusion and how after the crisis in 2008, recovery of social groups has been very unequal, and therefore we need to look for other different social integration models that are innovative. And right, that's what encourages us to work on this new Living Lab model. We are financed by the European Union through Erasmus Plus, but beyond this funding, we strive for sustainability of what we do. Beyond this, the structures we create and the projects we promote should be projects that can survive even after the end of this initial funding or initial boost provided by European funds. We are part of a European university strategy that seeks to develop common strategies, foster collaboration between universities across European borders, and all of this within the framework of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. So this is the background against which we work. Within EU Peace, we have created many activities and structures. Here we will be presenting the Living Lab, which is part of a work package that we call social dialogue. What we seek is dialogue with all actors, social agents, stakeholders involved in these objectives that I have just shared with you. The Living Lab, as you probably know better than myself, is a concept that has been around for some time. We adhere to the definition provided by ENNOL, the European Network of Living Labs, which you can see on this slide. ENNOL defines the Living Lab as an open innovation ecosystem bringing together actors, universities, civil society, the private sector, public institutions, and citizens. And that's why we are so delighted to be here today, because I think this meeting showcases what we are truly going after through our Living Lab. Our Living Lab is part of a truly tripartite approach to creating the social dialogue we seek. On the one hand, we have created an advisory body, THIVIC is part of it. We have created a group of people representing all these different realities that we want to kind of serve as our guiding light, our guiding group in exploring relevant topics, problems, and developing or ideating possible solutions. So, for example, on the one hand, we have this advisory body. On the other hand, we have what we call the bridge dialogue formats. These are events we organize and create where we bring together representatives from different sectors around a specific topic. These are spaces for dialogue on very specific issues. These can be closed or public. And as I was saying, they allow for the exchange of opinions. The third pillar is the Living Lab. This is a more consistent structure that allows for the creation of projects at the local level. but also to share those projects, results, outcomes, and ideas within a more international umbrella structure through EU Peace. Our approach, as I've said before, is based on what I was saying the values of peace, justice, and inclusive societies. What we seek are innovative solutions to common problems. I think we are in very good company here and also internationally because, according to NOL data, there are currently about 480 living labs worldwide. This is NOL data, as I was saying, and there's evidence that these living labs improve, for example, the effectiveness of public policies and the search of solutions. Our methodology is the methodology of co-creation. I think this is something that we all here share. We want to actively engage users throughout the entire process in a very active manner. Universities sometimes traditionally err on the side of more one-way design and communication. We create projects unilaterally, we present them, we implement them, and only then do we actually involve the public in a later stage in the transfer of outcomes or in the search for participants for studies. What we want to do here is turn this around. We want to start from scratch, designing everything through dialogue with all of you, designing it together, jointly, deciding together what's worth researching, experimenting with, and implementing. So, our methodology is basically multilateral and multidirectional, and I think in this regard it's very democratic in its approach. What we really want to be here is a bridge between many things, between theory, in which the university often excels in practice, between the public and private sector, between academia and the professional world, between all the stakeholders of the different communities. And I believe it's very important that we are working on this. And to close this part of my speech, I'll give you a fact. The Spanish National Statistics Institute has published a report indicating that almost 30% of households in Spain cannot make ends meet. This is just one example of the very urgent problems we face. We hope to contribute with new and innovative proposals through our Living Lab in collaboration with all of you. That's all on my side. Moving on with the slides, but my colleague Bernardo is going to introduce you to a couple of projects that are currently underway. Exactly as you were saying, Brigitte, universities want to become that bridge with society because the concept of universities' missions are changing a bit. Maybe in another time, classically, we thought that research and teaching were the two central axes of our universities and its mission. We now want to introduce another aspect that we believe is absolutely crucial, which is the ability to have an impact on society. We want to transfer this knowledge not only through books, which often reach the average person years later, but by establishing a dialogue in real time. We see that we are at a critical stage where the concept of university is evolving, and therefore that's where the different ways of doing things and methodologies come in. I'm a PhD candidate in education, and I work specifically with the service learning methodology, which also seeks something similar to what the Living Lab proposes, because it's not simply about the university offering a pre-established project that other stakeholders can join, nor is it simply about offering our students the opportunity to volunteer because sometimes they end up being just cheap labor for us. It's about finding and creating a common space to co create. I want to bring you two examples that have emerged from more than one program at university, which already show the beginnings of how we at the University of Comillas are trying to break down barriers a bit, because we often become isolated and become experts in very specific topics, limiting ourselves to certain disciplines. And with our degrees, what Comillas has found is that these dialogues can be held within the university, making them more cross-sectional, transversal, and interdisciplinary. So, I want to introduce you to the Impulsa project, which is part of our Living Lab. It was born within the program for refugees and forced migration. It has many researchers from the field of psychology, theology, sociology, and people who also work in international relations. What has happened initially is that through listening and deep dialogue with refugees and migrants, they have heard this phrase, "it is what it is." It is what it is a super limiting phrase. This is what it is. You will be washing dishes in the kitchen, you will be a bartender, and you can't aspire to anything more. But many of these refugees and migrants have expressed certain expectations when they move to a new country. They have new aspirations. And so that's where the idea of wanting to give these refugees and migrants certain opportunities to integrate. That's where this idea comes from, and it aligns perfectly with the values we share with these new universities in terms of fostering more inclusive societies. So, what this program has achieved is by being in constant contact with social stakeholders and also with the private sector, we can meet in various settings and test where to take this and what direction to take this, because we find that they're refugees and migrants who have certain aspirations. So they are willing to invest in capacity building and training those who want to become professionals in the hospitality industry. And how are they hoping to do this? Perhaps through a micro credential. Little time ago, we founded the Madrid Cooking Campus, which is joining forces with two super interesting partners, the Bulli Foundation and Mugariz. And what they're trying to do then is give these young people the opportunity to enter the hospitality industry, but not just to be waiters, not just to wash dishes. So they can actually study agronomy, management of everything gastronomy, and also so that they can contribute to this field with their creativity or new ways of innovating, right? Even within the culinary field. So, what you are seeing here is the beginning of ongoing conversations to advance a micro credential, which may also at some point provide a different legal status for refugees and migrants, and so that they can integrate better into society. The next project within our Living Lab was born again, as I mentioned, within a university degree, in this case, the degree of energy and poverty, which has a large element of or group of engineers. And however, it also includes engineers who, having been trained at Comillas, many of them have that passion for working towards the common good. So we have engineers, but also sociologists and other branches of knowledge, other fields of knowledge. What they have been exploring are the themes of energy and poverty. Basically, as we know, there is energy poverty, and that in itself is an inability to access basic and necessary energy services. It's not only about not being able to pay your bills, but people who have to adapt because they cannot afford to consume as much energy. So even in winter, they lower the thermostat instead of setting it at 19 degrees, setting it at 16 degrees as an indication of energy poverty, or not using the washing machine as frequently because of the electricity cost that they can't cover or afford later, or maybe in an extreme case in winter, not using the heating and not staying warm inside. They have to wear clothes inside. They've noticed that this is a fairly widespread problem, not only in Spain, but in many developed countries. What they are achieving with this department is working hard and hand in hand with private companies with whom they have very good relationships, with the third sector as well, which provides access to a deeper understanding of the problem, and with the public administration as well. In fact, they are trying to influence public policies currently. A review of part of the Ministry of Ecological Transition Strategy is underway, and these conversations are taking place at Comillas, which has become a hub where people who approach the same reality and the same problems, but from different perspectives, can meet and gather. On behalf of Comillas, we are extremely honored to be able to hold this position, to foster this culture of engagement and gathering among different stakeholders. And in this particular case of NRPs, we can see how they are working towards social justice. Once again, they are aligned with our values. To talk a little bit about the challenges we face to conclude, I think there are two challenges moving forward. As I mentioned, the Living Lab, as Birgit was saying, is very recent and was born from the EU Peace Initiative. However, what we see is that the two projects that we are presenting were born from the university programs, which are at least already interdisciplinary. However, we want to take it even further. In our Living Lab, we want to promote and give birth to projects and initiatives that emerge from these gatherings. We want them to no longer be proposed simply from the university or from a degree, even though in-depth work is being done to understand issues, but rather to emerge beyond the academic sphere. As Eugenio was also mentioning from the HazLab, it requires courage to experiment, to fail, and to be able to make mistakes, see and adjust where necessary. The second challenge I believe that we face within the Living Lab is to take the Living Lab further. The EU Peace Project is extremely ambitious. They're practically trying to create European universities. The idea behind the Living Labs right now is that they're founded in 9 universities at the same time, in 9 cities, in 9 regions, different regions across Europe, and we would ideally like to achieve that these living labs that they later connect in order to scale, because surely many of the themes and problems we are noticing in Madrid or Spain are also being felt in the same way in Turkey, Germany, or the Czech Republic. To conclude, I wanted to share with you a concept that fascinates me, apart from summarizing these two projects I just explained. I come somewhat from the world of education, but this is a concept developed by Hannah Arendt, which is the concept of natality. With natality, what she's trying to express is that the birth of each person brings with it something truly new. The thing is, we live in a diverse society, and a plural society, so the only thing we can do is try to get started knowing that the projects that arise won't necessarily be completed in our lifetime. We won't see the end of them. We are starting these projects, and we hope that in these co-creative spaces, through these methodologies we are trying to innovate, we hope that other people can join in, contribute, and delve deeper. And thus, by working together, by adding all our voices, we can truly bring innovation and novelty to society, something regenerative, something unexpected, because that's ultimately what these projects and methodologies are all about. It's not a predetermined project, one we thought about a year ago and now it's simply being executed. No, it's about creating spaces for connections and synergies to emerge, resulting in the unexpected and the innovative. That's what we are trying to do at Comillas University. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Virgit, Bernardo. What a fascinating and enlightening message. This international experience in the framework of education and the academic world is truly making a difference. This last message, Bernardo, was beautiful, and it's almost transcendental. Now let's give the floor to Jesus Javier Escartin from the Aragon Open Government Lab. Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, Jesus, perfectly. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for inviting the government of Aragon to these sessions, which are always a space to enrich us all, right from the sharing of knowledge. I'd like to share my presentation and make the most of these 20 minutes that I want to share from Aragon. Give me a second, I apologize for the delay. Can you see my screen? I apologize. Let's see if I can share my screen. I apologize, but I can't find it. Fret not, Jesus. Whenever you're ready, that's fine. I apologize. Can't find the content. Don't worry. In the meantime, I'd like to let you know that we still need to get through the interventions of lab, and then there'll be a second block to talk about challenging projects with the GIS and NovaGob, and then we'll go take a break. Let me start sharing. I'm going to ask for help. Let's see if a colleague of mine can give me a hand, but in the meantime, let me tell you. Jesus, that's fine, don't worry. So, the government of Aragon has a policy since the year 2007, a policy that is linked to citizen participation, okay? Firstly, I'd like to let you know where we stand and what we are talking about. Aragon as a territory and as a land where we are working and contextualizing our efforts. Give me a second. It's formed by 33 counties. It's an autonomous community with a historical cultural identity and a huge cultural heritage, very wide territory, depopulation, aging population, one of the key topics for all of us. But there's an economic dynamism in very clear sectors and a strategic location with Zaragoza, and a vital and social dynamism that is very large of the third sector with all the social tissues, social fabrics rather, and with economic, cultural, social stakeholders, right? Etc. The issue of this lab and this policy for citizen participation and social innovation. Sorry, can you hear me? So it is characterized by 4 milestones. One was in 2007 when the General Directorate of Citizen Participation was created, another one in 2015 when a transparency and participation regulation was approved, which is key for us, and this entire line of transparency that is so vast, so enormous was initiated. And secondly, in 2019, there was an evolution that is in the last legislative term, we made a shift, a change of direction, and the Aragon Open Government Lab was created. In addition to continuing with all the citizen participation policies that had been developed, participatory processes, public consultations, various training initiatives, etc. In 2020, we have seen another step forward, which is to join, like several institutions in Spain, the Open Government Partnership, the OGP, specifically the local line of work, okay? The line of work of innovation is part of 3 major elements or axes around which our work revolves. One of the first is transparency, accountability, what we call the right to know, the right to information. Thus, there is a service in our administration focused on this. The second major line is citizen participation, the right to propose, to decide, to contribute to public policies through participatory processes. And our competence, of course, is in the area of participatory processes of public policies of the government of Aragon, but we also collaborate with local entities, local public policies, etc. And the third major axis is this axis of yours, the one of the right to do, the one of social innovation. As my colleagues have been saying, to co-produce, to co-create the government, your own city or town, to action research, to pursue this line of citizen science that is so crucial to us, learning by doing, local and service design, to experiment. It's somewhat along the same lines as all the labs and all the lines of research. The lab space is a laboratory. It's a lab that, apart from being a space which is centrally located, let's see if a colleague can help me share the presentation with you. It's located in the center of Zaragoza. It's a space in the square Plaza del Pilar, in other words, right in the city center of the capital of Aragon. It's a space serving not only our innovation projects, but also participatory processes and other training initiatives and other groups. Beyond being a space, it's a concept. Our concept of a lab differs perhaps from those you are presenting today because Above all, our framework is regional, not only in terms of our responsibilities or competences, but also in our approach or outlook to the entirety of public policies, which is where we primarily want to have an impact and contribute, even from a territorial perspective, and a territorial perspective that includes the human component, which is the fundamental component for a territory and for our towns, cities, and neighborhoods to flourish and continue to grow. In the organizational chart, this lab belongs to or reports to a general directorate of the Department of the Presidency, Interior and Justice. And we have a citizen participation service with a team of civil servants. We have 3 advisors, one for negotiation, one for service, with almost 9 consulting firms that are also part of our collaborative network and management network for all the projects I'm going to tell you about, and about 18 collaborators of all kinds, from freelancers to institutions, organizations, and platforms that collaborate with us for social innovation. We propose 2 major understandings and conceptions about social innovation, right? One, which is an open conversation, citizenship plus administrations, and on the other hand, this same understanding, like all of you, we're giving a hand. Excuse me, just a minute. Let me see if my colleague can help me out. I want to share the PowerPoint presentation, but I can't find it. Can't share my screen. Don't worry, you can share it with us on our email and we can share it ourselves. That can be done too. Thank you. This is one of my colleagues who is in charge of several projects. Jesus, we can send you an email on the chat, right? And then we share it ourselves. That's perfect. I think we're ready. There you go. Thank you very much. Give me a second.
Jesús, os enviamos un correo por el chat y nos lo podéis enviar.
You can see it now on the screen, right? Yeah, that's totally fine. Perfect. Thank you. Jesus, would you like to choose the full screen mode? Click the presentation button. There you go. That way we can read it better. So, as I was saying, the ecosystem is very similar. What objectives do we set for ourselves? First, what I was saying, bringing institutions closer to citizens, this convergence that other colleagues, especially those from the central government, have already proposed, right? And also, of course, the university, exploring, researching, and seeking out new models for public action. That's our idea. We started from an inspiring model and a working model that we have in the, well, excuse me, I'll show you a little bit of the space so that you can see our lab. As you can see, this lab requires a lot of investment, but it's a very flexible, dynamic space, very useful, pleasant, comfortable, open, very careful about its purpose and usefulness for whoever will make use of it, very versatile. Jesus, I apologize, but we can't see the images of the lab. We are seeing a different slide that doesn't contain any pictures. There you go. We still can't see the full screen. Don't worry, it's fine. We can continue. The lab is based on an inspiring model, a content model on innovation and how we understand public innovation, which began during the previous term with a director who was quite creative and a driving force, and which, based on 2 publications that were produced, one is the network of institutions from within, Hacking Inside, and another, a report that was presented, Institutions That Learn, to the Ibero-American General Secretariat at the Summit of Heads of State of the SEGIB. This model was born, called Institutions That Learn. Out of these two presentations, this model was born. We call it the hexagon of public innovation, which still guides us and continues to envelop everything we do in terms of innovation, even in participatory processes. This hexagon is composed of 6 elements, right? The 6 elements are openness, transversality, interconnection, blending initiatives, agility or speed to scale initiatives and avoid long lead times, prototyping, the generation of online communities or network communities, and the digital component. We implement this entire model, and these vectors for innovation are carried out, of course, in practically all initiatives, or at least we try to do so. This model has its own website. The HIP model you can find online, hipmodel.net. On the one hand, and on the other hand, give me a second. Jesus, I apologize, but I don't know if you are moving through the slides. What we see is not what you are talking about. It's like the presentation is frozen on slide number 7. Maybe it's the kind of sharing your screen mode. Maybe you should share your screen instead of your tab. Okay, we can hear you perfectly, but it's true that we can't follow the presentation. It's a shame. Don't worry. We will overcome this challenge. Anyway, I'll continue explaining, and in the meantime, I'll share it with you. It's fine. It's so interesting what you're talking about. We know the lab team so well that we are not missing a presentation in the slightest. Don't worry, I apologize. I'll send it later through a chat so that we can disseminate it among the colleagues. In addition to the HIP model, we wanted to talk from the lab of Aragon. We wanted to talk about the fact that this model has an operationalized concretization of all of these factors in a set of roles that you can have in a team that might be reflected in any initiative with human beings that want to share and collaborate, and a set of soft skills linked to these vectors that are crucial, plus a series of applied methodologies that fit in really well with each vector. As a great tool for disseminating innovation projects, we have the Aragon Open Government Lab blog. We use the website primarily for events, registrations, and participatory processes and dissemination. A very interesting element of Lab as a space is that it's a space for dialogue. In June, we've held several editions this June, including One we call Dialogues of Influence, primarily focused on political communication linked to citizens. We are doing it together with the Association of Political Communicators. In terms of training, we have the Politicap. We're already in our second edition. We are open to training in our lab related to the collective construction of knowledge, hybridization of ideas and initiatives generation. Last year, we had a professor from the University of Buenos Aires who came and spoke about precisely this idea, the collective construction of knowledge. Along these lines, we work extensively with the rural community. For example, we're working on a very powerful line of work. Rural Pride Day takes place on November 16th. It was born in a mining region in Aragon and is spreading through Spain, all the national territory gradually. We are also carrying out projects with other networks. In addition, we have promoted or hosted specialized labs. In 2025 specifically, we are designing and will be launching the Senior Lab, a community innovation lab for the well-being of seniors, which will bring together senior citizens and experts and anyone interested in this lab. They must be from Aragon, along the lines of creating innovation to, again, boost the well-being of a collective that is crucial in Aragon. In 2023 and 2024, we have supported different labs. I call them specialized labs. There was a very interesting one in THIVIC, experimenting, collaborating, innovating in labs and the climate crisis, another one on collaborative housing. Very interesting. There was one about co-design of collaborative housing because the formulas of coexisting is crucial. A series of or a network of important housing cooperatives, one on the social economy. I have another example from last year that I dynamized myself. We hosted the system of societies with 55 people from the whole country, systematizing practices in social work as a methodology that is very important. It brought together students, professors, professionals, citizens, and politicians. It was very interesting to host this lab. And in 2020, we started with a beautiful initiative about education, together with a co-design of services and institutes and high schools, rather. A center to train professors in collaboration with the ministry, back then the Ministry of Education. Other beautiful key initiatives that we want to share include, and which we later try to answer questions about, are the following. The Social Impact Academy. A Social Impact Academy for young people in its fourth edition now, including people from 18 to 25 years old from the whole region of Aragon, the rural and urban backgrounds. They present their initiatives, they offer training, they co-create, they collaborate, they design or redesign project initiatives for changes in their environments that are closest to them, and they have mentors and training, and this training is really specialized to develop the potential of these projects. They have a year to carry out these projects. In this last edition, there were 10 participants, but It's always very successful. We normally collaborate in alliance with the Institute of the Youth of Aragon, a second beautiful project, again in its fourth edition, is the company, La Compañía, a digital mediation network for seniors over 65 years old, where, on the one hand, citizen participation is encouraged in a safe space where we train digital mediators who are part of the collective of the elderly itself who become volunteer digital mediators. They train people, but especially they train through mentoring. There are trainers, but especially they count on the support of these mediators who help their peers, right? The profile of participants in these workshops, which are social media initiation workshops, to open accounts, to use WhatsApp, to download apps with no fear, cybersecurity, etc. These are workshops where the elderly, this community, this digital senior community, wants to go beyond the circuit of services dedicated to the senior collective. It's a profile of very motivated participants who are trying to age actively, looking for different spaces where they can find that protagonism and autonomy, right? Another beautiful initiative set up from 2020 is the Aspasia community, linking women and men, guided by the value of gender equality and participation in public policy construction and society spaces, boosting gender equality and good relationships between the genders, and advancing in the fight against gender stereotypes in different ways through a training space with training activities, an observatory, the mobilization of other projects and activities that I will later tell you about, training pills that are very different from rural women, artist women, sorority. Juana Frances, the great painter who was a colleague of Pablo Gargallo, the famous Aragon artist. There was a session to highlight the value of these kinds of figures, science, etc., women in power, and women and health, participation in arts, equality. Out of the Aspasia community of engaged women was another project was born, Eritatonas, which has generated a community of Wikipedia editors called Wiki Aragon Community of Editors, who are working on creating it's almost a group, an autonomous initiative. They gather on the first Monday of every month. What they do is they highlight the value of women on Wikipedia. Women from Aragon, of course, a group of Aragonese women who were involved in science, engineering, mathematics, etc., who should be well known. Another one was about the women of Alto Aragon, promoted by the Huesca City Council to highlight women in the performing arts, women leaders. In short, a group of very special women of all kinds. Another great line of work, another great initiative is the co-design in public services. As you are doing in other labs, this is a very interesting line of work. From lab, we have promoted over the years things that we can tell you about. For example, at the National Employment Institute and the Aragonese Employment Agency, The self-information points and employment offices through Aragon were redesigned. The service provided to citizens and families at the nature interpretation centers throughout Aragon was also redesigned with the aim of making them more welcoming, friendly, and accessible. Co-designs related to physical activity services as assets were also carried out vis-a-vis health, so line of health assets that you're familiar with. It was very interesting and beneficial to redesign and co-design the Child Information and Care Service, a responsibility of our Social Services Institute from the very beginning, how a family is formed, how they are welcomed, what the procedures are like, the entire roadmap, so to speak, what it looks like for a family, a child, when they arrive at the Child Protection Service, as it used to be called. Well, these are just some, but another very cool initiative was T-Lockers. It will be revived in 2025. This is a project linked to youth and social media to precisely combat or fight against hate speech and hate messages, and to work above all on this whole line of respect and identifying and avoiding fake news and joining forces with someone who also fights hate on social media. This project was initially carried out with the General Directorate of Immigration and the Youth Institute of Aragon. It will be revived in 2025 with this important adolescent and youth sector. And the last little project I wanted to tell you about, and later I'll keep quiet, is the Hola project. Hola is an innovation community of the government of Aragon, funded and implemented in collaboration with us, the Institute of Public Administration. It's held at the Aragon Lab, and above all, this project aims to welcome newly recruited civil servants who join each batch of competitive examinations through training and co-creation exchange sessions. Training sessions are offered to civil servants who want to work on our teams and reflect on this whole topic of soft skills. How linked to our role in teams, how we can sometimes share roles that generate innovation, and how we can move from flat teams, I do what I'm told, to innovative, motivated, participatory teams. And that's all. And I apologize again for the technical issues. Don't worry, Jesus, thank you so much. I'll send it via chat now. I'll send my presentation. That's perfect, Jesus. That's totally fine. Excuse me, Jesus, I have a question. On the chat, I'm saying they're asking if there's a website where they can access the training pills you've mentioned. Maybe on the website of the lab. Exactly. On the website and the blog. Right. Perfect. Perfect, Jesus. Thank you so much. The truth is that you have tremendous experience and track record with a huge volume and different types of projects. It's very, very interesting. Now, let's move on to challenging projects. We want some labs to talk about their most challenging challenges. Let's give the floor to our colleagues Loredana and Diana Tejerina de NovaGob. Thank you so much for inviting us, Maria P. and the whole team. Thank you for inviting us to tell you about the projects that we are developing in NovaGob in recent years. Here's my colleague Diana. I'm going to share my screen because we have prepared a brief presentation. Can you see it? Yes. Perfect. Okay. Before we start, I'll let you know a little bit about NovaGob. We have been working for more than 12 years, in public administration realms as a spin-off of the Autonomous University of Madrid, as a sort of knowledge project, also to create a network of people within the public sector, right, to encourage the exchange of knowledge, transfer of knowledge, and also networks of collaboration and mutual support, right, between public entrepreneurs. For more than 12 years, the project has been evolving. We have also identified some of the needs that we saw in the Spanish public sector. Our focus is towards administrations both in Spain, but in general in Iberoamerica, trying to boost new ways of working together within administrations, right? This perspective is more focused on people, it's more agile, more proactive, right? Trying to overcome methodologies or ways of working that are no longer in line with the challenges we face today. As Eugenio was saying before, right? These societies that are called the VUCA societies. We started developing the NovaGob Excellence Awards to give visibility, recognize, and transfer knowledge, right? On good practices, experiences that might be innovative. Yesterday, we closed the calls for proposal for the 2025 edition of the awards, and soon we will have more news to share with you. But there's been a very wide participation in Spain and also in Latin America. Also, let's mention that in 2016 we started with this lab activity when in reality it was just getting started in a very early stage, but also internationally there were very few labs. Today, let's say, it is luckily a practice that is widespread in public administrations, which is a fantastic piece of news. What do we do in our lab? We carry out different innovation dissemination activities, the part of giving visibility, transferring knowledge, creating collaboration networks and shared projects. And on the other hand, we research, we see how we are doing in innovation, specifically labs. For a long time, with this idea of, generating knowledge, researching this field, and later capacity building. This is a key topic. We are feeling it gaining traction in the public sector too, and mentoring or accompanying administrations in different projects that are very innovative. And here we'll tell you a little bit more about some of them. They are a true challenge for us. Why? Because they are very different. I mean, the projects that we have brought today are very diverse. The first one in which we are immersed right now, I mean, we have a couple of them that we're working on and that I would share today. These are projects that belong to very different fields, but that they truly belong together because they share the methodology of innovation. In this project of social innovation labs in drug policies, we are working with FIAP at Latin American level with labs in Chile, Colombia, Peru, and Uruguay. And now we are getting into the whole process of innovation that they have for the testing and validation of prototypes and the creation of implementation of strategies, scaling, and sustainability of labs with the objective of integrating in a sustainable manner the innovation approach in activities by institutions that promote these labs and also the umbrella program behind these labs. And well, these labs work on site in the field, sometimes in regions that are quite complex. For example, they might be isolated in the Amazon area in complex or dodgy neighborhoods in Colombia with target groups and publics from youth to women in a situation of vulnerability, people battling addictions. In our case, we work with institutions and entities who develop later this work in these regions. And well, we try to support them by giving them tools to develop activities. At the moment, as I was saying, we have selected several prototypes and we are already in the stage of testing. For us, this is a very complex project and a challenge because it's the first time that we work in this kind of field, even though we have experience in innovation. Another project that is very interesting that we developed last year with the Andalusian Employment Service is called Lab Empleo. It's an innovation lab that has to do with employment at Andalusian level. They wanted to set up a lab to identify methodologies that were participatory in nature in the field of employment and in 8 specific areas, which were the areas that had been identified as a challenge within the management of the SAE. And well, what we did there was a wide research on innovation of employment policies at national level, European level, international level. We carried out many interviews with people who had experience and were relevant in the field of employment in different autonomous communities. We designed the methodology of our workshops because also this challenge had to do with our agenda. We had to carry out the labs spread throughout 2 weeks. So the workshops, the 8 workshops had to take place in 2 weeks. We were present in all the Andalusian provinces working with groups who were identified right as necessary and important to count on their participation, from technicians, of course, of the Andalusian Employment Service, but also the SAE, but also mentors, counselors, advisors, people who are unemployed, third sector organizations collaborating with the SAE in the development of active employment policies, etc. And the truth is, it was a very enriching experience for everyone. Also, for us, we learned so much. Of course, we were based on the methodology of design thinking for our workshops. We were really focusing on the needs of those target groups that we were inviting, and we dynamized 8 workshops, out of which 40 prototypes came out. They were submitted to the SAE. 5 were selected, if I'm not mistaken, for their later development throughout this year, throughout 2025. So the truth is that, again, innovation methodologies can be applied to totally different fields, like, for instance, that of employment, and a field that, like many others, needs this approach, this well-thought approach focused on people and needs, and also not so much on proceedings and processes and how within administrations we organize ourselves, but really how can we offer the best services to these people who find themselves in very different situations, and in general, they are in a vulnerable position. When you are looking for unemployment, you need certain guidance, you need orientation and support. Some people more than others, right? So depending on the groups, you also need a very important approach towards needs to create these archetypes of different groups and to be very aware of the needs that they might have within organizations, right? Because in the framework of the project, many matters came up that were related to, well, potential difficulties and challenges that the workers themselves face. The workers or the employees providing assistance. So counting on these different groups provides you that cross-sectional 360-degree vision outlook of the problem that you wouldn't otherwise have, but also vis-a-vis solutions that might be carried out that should be truly effective to tackle the problems we are facing within the innovation labs. Another project that is underway right now, and even though I tell it myself, it's Diana leading this project actually, because this is a project that manages the team of NovaGob, of young people under 30 years old. We are very proud of this project because it was developed in collaboration with Cotec in the framework of the call for proposals from last year. Via Cotec focused on youth, developed too by the youth themselves. This is a project with, by, and for young people at the end of the day. As you know, and this is not news to anyone, the problem of housing is a huge challenge as a country, as cities, especially in more tensioned areas of the country. This project focuses on the access of the youth to housing. It's extremely complex. It has many different branches, but in the lab, we are focusing only on one of these branches out of the many complex facets of this problem. I believe that labs are more effective when they are truly focused and try not to cover too many branches of complex problems. I think they should be more concentrated on specific matters, right? We have now carried out an analysis that is very comprehensive, and why not say it? It's really good, of the problem of access to housing for youth from a more comprehensive systemic perspective with European level examples, trying to identify models and patterns, initiatives that are being developed, and, well, we have ended up the research phase and we are now working on organizing the co-creation stage with a lab methodology that I believe is very different, and we can't spoil anything so far, and yet we can already give you some nuances. Again, it is focused on the double approach of design thinking with the idea of active listening, co-creation and collaboration with the youth and other stakeholders who are also relevant within this problematic. Of course, administrations, we are going to work in 5 different cities in Spain that from many points of view might be considered tensioned areas in terms of housing: Madrid, Barcelona, Málaga, Valencia, and San Sebastian. They are different cities, but they share this issue, right? At this moment, we are present there and we are already delving into the methodology and co-creation activities and organization and workshops that will be developed in each and every one of these cities, because our idea at the end of the day, at the end of the process rather, is to count on the input from the youth so that they can offer feasible prototypes that might be scaled, adapted, and defended publicly. We are also trying to create an environment based on proposals and constructing, creating, building bridges between the technical, institutional, and social worlds in a realm that, given how relevant the problem is, might be quite controversial, polemic. Often we talk a lot, but there's so much noise, so much information, and it's easy to get lost, right? This is a true challenge for us, but it's really Diana's team and Marco's team, and I am the group of youth researchers in our foundation. It's going really well, and we are so proud to be able to develop this together with COTEC, the COTEC Foundation. This is a project that we believe might have amazing outcomes. And now another project we have developed in late 2022 and early 2023, developed in collaboration with INAP. The results of this, the report from this project, was the basis to create the School of Senior Public Management, or High Public Management. What we did was the exploratory phase, the first phase of a process of innovation, study and analysis of trends, identification of training needs, and definition of the competency framework for management staff, focused on the General State Administration, AGE in Spanish. In this research segment, we conducted a study to determine at national level to determine how this issue of identifying training needs and the competency framework of public management personnel was being addressed nationally and internationally, both in Spain and elsewhere in Europe and around the world. We administered a survey, a questionnaire, applied to more than 450 public managers from the General State Administration. Then we discussed all this more quantitative information in 4 brainstorming workshops attended by 40 public sector executives. I believe the report, at least its executive summary, is public. As I mentioned, the results of that report were the basis for creating the School of Senior Public Management. It's true that we had a very good collaboration with INAP, and I also want to congratulate all the institutions that are committed and feel encouraged to promoting these types of more participatory methodologies, which basically base their public decisions on data and evidence, focused on people's actual real needs and not just assumptions. Data is crucial. What do all these projects have in common? Yesterday, when we discussed this with Diana, we said, what's the common ground between all of these projects? We've developed our approach over time, right? Our approach has been developed over time. As we said at the start, as Eugenio mentioned, what are labs? Labs are new open workspaces, horizontal, experimental, and open workspaces where different stakeholders come together to find different solutions to public challenges. We actually differentiate between three types of labs: social innovation labs, citizen labs, public innovation labs or GOB labs, policy labs. There are many different names, plus living labs. We'll cover a bit of everything at this meeting, and each one has a different focus. For example, government labs. Internationally, you have surely heard of Mind Lab in Denmark, which no longer exists, but it was the first one to exist. Or the government lab in Chile, a benchmark for many. There are many powerful labs in Latin America and Europe. Increasingly, there is a growing focus on social innovation driven by societies and citizens, which are fresher with a more hacker approach, where the public administrations act more as facilitators instead of becoming the driving force behind the lab. They take a secondary role. And living labs have a more specialized or focused approach, I'd say, on the observation of real-life environments, simulations, and testing how different solutions can be applied to complex challenges from a user experience perspective and how they can do it. Our idea is that all of these models should work together jointly. There are also what I'd call hybrid labs, which combine different traits between citizen government and living labs. There are different formats, but I'd say this is very important and beneficial. Labs must adapt to the context and become useful to their purpose of innovating and solving truly complex challenges. In order to do this, they need a structure adapted to organizations' challenges. Anyway, our methodological approach is based on that double axis, that sequence between divergent and convergent thinking. We open our thinking to explore divergence, and then we synthesize convergence. We apply this across all projects we work in. There are also a series of stages within the innovation process that we understand is as flexible and adaptive. In general, methodologies must be rigorously grounded and with a methodological basis, but in the public sector especially, flexibility is essential, especially when working with citizens in complex community contexts. We certainly must be flexible and adaptive. Of course, innovation phases are not necessarily sequential. They can and should overlap. They can happen at the same time, and our intervention can begin in different phases: ideation, prototyping, research. We might start in different phases and then stop, adapt throughout the project according to the needs of the organizations and the processes and programs themselves, depending on the projects. But in any case, the focus is always on co-creation. The focus is always on co-creation and identifying stakeholders with a voice and an ability to contribute with their knowledge to these projects, focusing on needs with this vision of agile management and, of course, experimentation. That's all. If you have any question, here we are. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and we hope that these projects, these challenging projects that we have shared, might become useful to you. All information is on our website. Of course. Thank you so much, Loredana. I'm sure you will. We just read a question in the chat whether the SAE Andalusian Employment Service workshops included citizen participation or only public employees. Yes, in fact, as I was saying, we also counted on unemployed people and representatives from the third sector organizations that work together with the SIE in different areas of active employment policies. They are often present in guidance or other employment-related projects, and of course the SAE employees, both from the guidance department and technical staff. There's a significant diversity of participating profiles. Thank you so much, Loredana. And finally, we have the GIS presentation with Senia Ivonne and Silvia Heredia. It's true that we are a bit short of time, but let's keep going. Maybe we'll just cut the break or the panel discussion short. No problem. We'll give you the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us the chance to share our project, which you'll see is somewhat different from what we've seen throughout the morning. These innovation labs closely linked to the government. In our case, our presentation will be divided into two parts. I'll introduce the first part, explaining what the Social and Healthcare Innovation Hub is all about. And then, as you asked for a tangible example of a project, Yvonne will present one of the projects we've incubated and selected to share with you. So, the Innovation Hub, give me a second. Can you move to the next slide? So the Innovation Hub is a public instrument of the Catalan Health and Social Services system created with the aim of promoting projects that improve the living standards of people in need of social and health care, and with the intention that these projects might be replicated and subsequently deployed within the system. As I was saying, and this is very important, we are an initiative coordinated by the Terrassa Health Consortium together with the Joan Costa Roma Foundation from the same consortium. In this next slide, you can see that we started this project in 2023, so we are still young as a project, but we've already made significant progress given how young this initiative is. We started with a European project and initial funding to think about how to develop initiatives that improve people's living standards. At the end of the day, our goal is to attract and promote innovative projects in integrated care, both in healthcare and social sectors. All projects are fully aligned with the strategies of the Departments of Health and Social Services. From the outset, we have been established as the innovation instrument for the future integrated health and social agency of Catalonia, which is currently undergoing parliamentary approval. How do we push this project? We created a program we called Transforma. The first thing we do is identify challenges and generate calls for proposals. I'd like to add here that these challenges are identified in a highly participatory manner, both with industry stakeholders and with the public. Once the challenges are defined, we generated the calls for proposals, selected the projects. We ended up incubating 10 projects per call, and we began their development and incubation within the Transforma program with the goal of conducting rapid proofs of concept. You can see how it works in this slide. We begin with the opening of the call for proposals and the submission of proposals. We have a community of expert and independent evaluators who assess each proposal. There is always at least one evaluator from the social sector and one from the healthcare sector, because our goal is precisely to promote integrated care. Therefore, the projects with the highest scores in both areas are the ones that move on to the incubation phase in the Transforma program, which lasts a total of 12 months, although the proof of concept is completed during the first 10 months. The final 2 months are devoted to the economic justification, the presentation of results, and a closing ceremony to highlight the projects to various stakeholders. What do we offer at Transforma? On the one hand, financing of up to 80,000 euros per project for proof of concept. We also offer training and a portfolio of support services. The training is group-based for representatives of the 10 selected teams. We support the implementation of successful projects so that we can scale them to the system, and that's where the name of the program comes from. We don't want to do things for the sake of them. We want to transform the system. When it comes to trainings at the HIC, we offer group sessions. The trainings are group-based from representatives of the 10 selected teams. Key topics covered include integrated social and health care, innovation in the personal services sector, communication, value proposition, effective presentations, performance and impact indicators, which are very important in any project. How can we measure impact? And outcomes, analysis of the environment, sustainability models, and private, public, or alternative financing models. As for services, teams choose the ones they need based on their characteristics, although 2 are mandatory. The development of the intervention plan, worked on in individual sessions with HIS staff, and monthly follow-up, also individuals. These 2 elements allow us to ensure that the intervention will be carried out with the maximum guarantee of success. We want That's how we carry out a monthly follow-up where we sit with every team. Apart from this and their needs, the teams choose the financing, communication, sustainability, ecosystem, anything they need. They are tailored. There's a presentation, as I was saying. The first call took place in January 2023. We began to work in January 2023, and in June we launched our first call for proposals, focusing on the challenge of unwanted loneliness. Despite coinciding with the summer holiday period, June 27 to August 5, and being a completely new initiative, 83 proposals were submitted. We didn't know how many proposals would be submitted. 83 proposals was very shocking to us. We had to assess them, select them, etc. And it was a shame because there were many, but only 10 could be budgeted. We only had the budget to fund 10 of them. These 10 proposals were included in the Transforma program. As I mentioned earlier, we conducted a proof of concept for 10 months, and in the following 2 months, they underwent an economic evaluation. We presented the results to the group, and we held a public closing event, giving them that public visibility. As you can see on the next slide, here we have the 10 projects we selected. We wanted the call to be flexible, diverse, and open. We achieved that. We were very pleased not only with the number of projects received, but their diversity. Out of the assessment, fully independent process, we selected very diverse projects in topics, entities. There were both companies, research centers, social entities, and even some health entities regarding collectives too. Regarding the territory, there was representation of projects from different areas of Catalonia, especially from the provinces of Barcelona, Girona, and Lleida. Regarding, again, collectives and focusing on unwanted loneliness, it's very interesting because 50% of the projects we selected were aimed at older people, but there was also a 20% focused on chronicity and mental health, in addition to projects on residential exclusion, disability, and childhood and adolescence. It was very interesting to see how all these groups, despite what one might think, also face situations of unwanted loneliness. This circumstance impacts them all. The next slide, very briefly, I'll say the incubation of these 12 projects ended up with a closing session. And we are very happy because what we saw is that 100% of the projects achieved an improvement of the feeling of unwanted loneliness, and in the best cases, the well-being of these people. We also saw a reduction of the number of visits to hospital services and primary health care, so we were very satisfied. Some of the teams even proposed early detection systems for unwanted loneliness. There was a second call with a very broad participation of experts and citizens and key figures to define the challenge based on deinstitutionalization, and we got to community alternatives, institutionalization. We wanted to promote deinstitutionalization, in the cases that were whenever it was possible, and to avoid institutionalization if we can provide care from communities for people to be able to keep living at home. This second call was open for 5 weeks. We received 58 proposals. These saw the selection of 10. It's the same process as the first call. The proofs of concept finish in July. We will have September and October to present results, justify the results, and the closing act. Again, we saw a big diversity of entities and themes and territories. In this case, we are very happy because of the push. We wanted the 4 provinces to participate. We found a project in Tarragona, unlike the first time. So this time we did cover the entire territory. The following slide shows the groups involved in these community alternatives. The majority of the selected projects involve dependent individuals. Then we have 2 projects on mental health, 2 on older adults, and 2 on children and teenagers. This is our timeline. The 10 projects are right on the red line for the month of May, which indicates that they are nearing completion of the intervention and that their preliminary results will be ready by the end of July. Afterwards, we will have the group presentation of results and the closing ceremony. With this, what have we achieved in these 2.5 years, right? Since we started in January, we've launched 2 calls for proposals. We've assessed numerous projects, and above all, we have incubated 20 integrated social and healthcare projects, of which 10 have been completed and 10 are ongoing. Regarding the projects from the first call, what's happened with these? We have created a community, and this is part of the HIS. We call it HISers. It doesn't end here. It's true that funding and formal support has ended, but we continue to offer support and follow up. It's very important for us to know 100% of the projects we started are still active, right? This slide is regarding unwanted loneliness. Half of the projects have received funding, probably thanks in part to the training and the technical support we provided through the HIS. 60% of them are collaborating with city councils or supra-municipal entities. Most are being replicated in other regions. Some examples include the Zonamut project in the Girona Health Region, the ICE project extending to 5 more municipalities in the Alt Pirineu and Aragon region, the AP Compartim project, which is being scaled up to more institutes, and the CLOSIF project, which has secured a PERTE strategic plan, a funding of 480,000 euros to continue its development. Also, it's been very satisfying to see that some teams have formed alliances from the first meeting. Synergies began to emerge, and it's very comforting to see how today we have created 3 teams, Salsa, ICE and Casal Online, who are collaborating. I don't want to go on for any longer, so I'll give way to the Salsa project, one of the unwanted loneliness projects we incubated during the first session. I'll give the floor then to Yvonne. Thank you very much, CEO. I'll share some slides with you about the Salsa project. I wanted to present you the Salsa project as a social and health intervention to fight against unwanted loneliness, as CEO has explained, an emerging public health problem. Salsa was born from the Alicia Foundation and the San Joan de Vilatorrada Primary Care Center, where the program's pilot test was developed. The acronym refers to the promotion of health, nutrition, and sociability, specifically to address the challenge of unwanted loneliness. Salsa is a social and health intervention, and this is important, aimed at people suffering from unwanted loneliness, addressing issues such as anxiety, depression, social isolation, and malnutrition associated with this condition. It establishes a social prescription system, a non-medical strategy, in this case, a social one, in which meals are prescribed by healthcare professionals at primary care centers, not from the territory itself, and provided by social restaurants. These meals then become an opportunity to foster social relationships. We have seen that Salsa has really improved the quality of life of people experiencing unwanted loneliness, and it also at the same time boosts local bars and restaurants, contributing to the local economy. Give me a second. The program had 3 stages that were very clearly differentiated, right? A pre-intervention stage where we designed the program, the protocol, and we recruited beneficiaries, right? Later, there was a part based on interventions that lasted for months, where the beneficiaries would go eat at the restaurant twice a week for 4 months, and later there was a stage more about post-intervention to assess and analyze the outcomes, right? In this stage of interventions, the target population or audience was adults over 18 years of age with a certain degree of autonomy, nutritional risk, social isolation risk, or with limited emotional support. Initially, 149 people were identified and recruited, 122 from health services and 16 from primary care social services and 12 from the city council. So finally, we saw a collaboration between social services and healthcare services. Finally, the people who met inclusion criteria were selected. This group reached 94 people, out of which we established two groups randomly divided. They were independent. One was the control group, meaning they didn't go to these meals in the restaurant. They had a routine follow-up in primary care, and the intervention group attending these restaurant meals twice a week with a dynamizing figure taking care of them throughout 4 months, follow up by their GPs too. And apart from this, in parallel, they received cooking and nutrition workshops. Focal groups were created to understand the intervention, how it was going, and to assess how participants felt. From then onwards, there was a post-intervention to analyze outcomes. In this post-intervention, the initial questionnaires were repeated, and we saw clearly that the outcomes were extremely promising. What we observed included significant improvements in depression and anxiety. We compared the control group and the intervention group attending the restaurant meals, and we saw very clearly that, wow, in terms of scale, there was a significant improvement, a reduction of depression and anxiety, but also in the intervention group itself from the get-go of the restaurant meals, and at the end of the 4 months, the intervention group had improved a lot. We also saw an improvement or a better perception of health and quality of life, and their social life, the perception of their living standards, basically at the end of the 4 months. It was very important. We also saw an improved adherence to the Mediterranean diet. We saw that participating in these workshops, carried out in parallel about nutrition and gastronomy, and the frequency of twice a week, going to the restaurant, eating what they had to eat there. It wasn't about going to a restaurant to eat whatever you fancy. No, they were eating a very balanced diet with a lot of vegetables, etc. They started learning about nutrition and sticking to this at home, which was a very pleasant surprise for us. In terms of their clinical impact, it was very interesting. There was a significant reduction in visits to their CAP, emergency rooms, and referrals to specialists. So that is already a reduction of healthcare spending and allocation of resources. I'd like to mention the great social impact, which was the most significant one. Satisfaction surveys were shared, and we saw that both professionals and participants had an overwhelming result of almost 100% satisfaction. Among participants, 23.55% out of 25, and among professionals, 24.1 out of 25. In addition, there are testimonies gathered throughout 4 months and later that say that, hey, we created a group on WhatsApp, we meet to go for a walk, have a coffee. We have created beautiful bonds of friendship. We need to meet senior citizens, created groups on WhatsApp established throughout these 4 months, and to this day, they are still helping each other. So this lasted over time, right? Once the program was done, they kept meeting. So we can guarantee that salsa actually improved the emotional health and quality of life of people experiencing unwanted loneliness, fostering social ties, reducing the burden of care, and energizing community spaces such as restaurants and bars. It has increased adherence to Mediterranean diet, and restaurants and bars have always been a gathering space, and now they can become another agent of the healthcare field. From then onwards, we communicated in the press, the media, radio, television, and this dissemination helped other territories become interested in the program. We were also awarded a PAS award that is very important in the Generalitat of Catalunya about projects that encourage health through diets and physical activity. Our award was related to community level contributions. We are very grateful, very happy. We tested in a small town, right? In a more autonomous way, accompanied by the Alicia Foundation from a primary healthcare center. In the same municipality, the city council organized to test how the program could be carried out. Given how salsa had been carried out until that point where it was totally funded and free for the participants. The first month was funded 100%, and then we studied the possibility of a co-payment where users would pay less than half of the cost of this diet. It worked so well that the social services of the town hall has integrated it as a program that will take place every single year. Now, from now onwards, where are we going? Where do we stand in this idea of creating a digital tool to basically digitalize the management of this intervention and to be able to scale it and replicate it in many other populations? So we are there looking for financing, for funds, and looking for collaborations and synergies to be able to take it a step further. We don't want to finish here. We want to implement it at Catalan level or even statewide, if possible. Here you can see a little bit about the proposal for this intervention, and if you have any question, please ask me. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. The last project incorporating already in the execution itself the assessment, right, of counterfacts. And I understand this comes from the healthcare field. This is a common practice there, and it gives us an overview of the impact on population with the control group and intervention group. This is great.